It doesn't make any sense to me. The FDA gets complaints about these things. At the first complaint, they ought to be looking into it. How can we get them to do their job?
Well, I don't know the answer to that.
All of these complaints are way underreported, right? Maybe only 10% of the adverse effects they actually get calls about. So if they're getting one call, really it's 10 calls. If they've got 100 calls, it's really 1,000 calls.
The FDA is, in fact, run by the drug companies because they have to answer to the industry, the medical industry.
After a few months, I had to go into a wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair for 6.5 years, almost 7 years. And during that time, I had to use 38 different orthopedic braces, from big boot casts to wrist braces to slings. I had even more intense pain in my hands. I couldn't write, I couldn't draw, and we found out I had been getting microscopic tears in my Achilles tendons in both ankles. I had 2 tears in the cartilage in my back on my left side, right by my rib cage. It's been a nightmare.
We had a prescription. This wasn't something that I bought over the counter. This was a prescribed drug. We were just totally blindsided.
There was an article 4 or 5 years ago in the Journal of American Medical Association that said most changes to a drug label, about half of all changes to drug labels, are based on adverse event information that comes in 4, 5, 6, 7 years after the product is approved. Again, because there's been, in effect, a massive experiment done on the American public. A small clinical experiment is not going to be equivalent to a mass marketing of a product.
The most interesting thing that we found out was that, especially in the year of 2000 when I took this medication, the British National Formulary, they had all of the tendon warnings in the British National Formulary. They had the pediatric warning. They had more complete warnings about what this medication can do than our own country did.
Other countries have much more effective regulatory systems than the United States. We've seen warnings added in other countries years before the FDA made it happen here.
The idea of off-label use isn't limited just to prescribing a drug for a disease for which it hasn't been found to be safe and effective. Off-label use can also mean prescribing it for age groups or genders for which the drug has not been found to be safe and effective. And we find massive amount of off-label use of various drugs ranging from antidepressants to antipsychotic drugs to some antibiotics in age groups for which the companies have not submitted information showing that the benefits outweigh the risks. A growing person may be more susceptible to cartilage and other damage than someone who's not. I mean, the whole ethics of clinical trials on adults, and even more so on children, is a difficult one. I mean, no one wants to say you should never do studies on children because children may need certain drugs, but one has to be very careful about not subjecting children in experiments or clinical trials to unnecessary risks.
I first noticed it when I was dancing, and I had to quit. Like, I stopped dancing because my Achilles felt like it was gonna snap one day in class, and like that's my worst fear, like ever, is having your Achilles snap. So, yeah, I've taken Levaquin like 4 or 5 times at least. Usually just for like sinus infection, cold. They told us like there are some side effects like like tendon damage and stuff like that, but my doctor's like, it's only in, elderly people, so you're fine. I took it when I was like 14 and 15, and then like partially tore my ACL, and then my knee started swelling up, and you never realize you could be a statistic.
You have to have informed consent. If you're going to be given a drug like this, you should be told, if you take this drug, yes, it's going to cure the problem that you have, but you may have tendon damage, cartilage damage for the rest of your life. How would anyone believe that you could take 5 pills and 8.5 years later be still having flare-ups?
A citizen petition is simply a request made to the FDA. Any interested party can make such a request. Public citizen is involved in petitioning the government in a whole host of areas to try to get the government to be responsive to consumer needs. In this case, the Health Research Group identified fluoroquinolines as a cause of tendon ruptures. Because that's a side effect of these medications that many people are not aware of, and it's not very intuitive. A lot of people would not think that taking an antibiotic can lead to a rupture of an Achilles tendon, for example. It's the kind of adverse reaction that really needs to be prominently displayed on the labeling in order to warn the consumer about these potential side effects.
It isn't exactly known, but there certainly is some evidence that this family of drugs, Cipro, Levaquin, for example, can interfere with the metabolism of cartilage, and in doing that they may prevent cartilage from being repaired and could cause tendonitis, which if continued would lead to a tendon rupture.
My brother, he had that thing in his muscle. He literally tore a tendon in his bicep. And until I was really thinking about it, I was like, we didn't know where that came from. He's not a big, weightlifter. He didn't do anything like that. It's just regular activity. Boom, torn. Surgery, the whole bit. You know what? He's got prostate issues. Chances are he has been on Cipro.
They believe that somehow inhibits the production of collagen or increases the breakdown of collagen or decreases the blood flow to the tendons, but they're not sure. They don't know what's causing it.
It's not just when you're taking it. It happens to people before and while they're taking it and after they're taking it. And it's not really, I can't find any information about how long you have to be concerned afterwards.
The black box warning that we asked the FDA gently to do and then sued them to force them to do it was, from our perspective, limited to this one area. It was limited to tendonitis and, in the extreme but unfortunately too often case, tendon rupture. So to the extent that the FDA often responds only to what they're asked to do, we didn't ask them to do anything other than that, because this is certainly extremely well documented. There's no dispute about it, and it's preventable. Black box warning refers literally to a warning box enclosed in black on the professional FDA-approved labeling. That means when a doctor looks up in the physician's desk reference, which is the standard book that doctors look at for drugs, they would see a black box.
In January of 2008, we filed a lawsuit against the FDA in the federal district court here in DC, alleging that their failure to respond in substance to Dr. Wolf's citizen petition was a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. And the Administrative Procedure Act essentially requires that agencies do their job, and that agencies do their job without unreasonable delay. And that's really the issue, is we were arguing that by sitting on this citizen petition and doing essentially nothing while people continue to be harmed, and some of these injuries could have been prevented by a labeling change, that the FDA was violating federal law.
The thing that really bothers me about this is the FDA actually had to get sued by Public Citizen to then issue the black box warning.
It's the FDA saying we are doing something to help the public.
Right.
We've done the most we can do. We've put a quote-unquote black box warning on the package insert that the patient will never see.
And the doctor rarely sees. And where does the doctor get their information from? The drug reps. Drug reps aren't walking around with their little black box warning, right?
Not uncommon that we hear about black box warnings from rival drug reps, detailed people from other drug companies that make similar medications or other medications in the same class, and they'll come in and this drug X, they got a black box warning for this and we don't, so this is why you should use us, and so on and so forth.
The reason why our petition and lawsuit goes beyond just a black box warning is that patients don't necessarily see a black box or even become aware of it, and therefore the same information will have to appear in the FDA-approved medication guides. And that same information, if the FDA forces the companies, will be in a warning letter sent out by all the companies collectively to doctors. So the reason why patients have not heard of a black box warning is this is in the professional labeling. The same information needs to be in the FDA-approved medication guide.